Welcome to the Gut Show. I'm Erin Judge, registered dietitian and founder of Gut Debate, and I will be your host. My goal on this side of the internet is to empower those with IBS and digestive disorders to understand their guts better, to have a healthier relationship with their bodies, and make confident choices to improve their digestive health. During this season of the Gut Show, you can expect a weekly conversation covering a hot topic related to health, digestion, and IBS. As a disclaimer, I am a dietitian, but I'm not your personal dietitian. Everything we cover in this episode is meant to be educational and not a substitute for personalized care from your healthcare team. Welcome, and let's dive into today's episode. Are FODMAP troubles keeping you from enjoying your favorite foods? Our sponsor, FODZYME, can help you add these foods back to your diet. When sprinkled on or mixed into high FODMAP meals, FODZYME's novel enzyme blend breaks down the FODMAPs fructan, GOS, and lactose into easily digestible carbohydrates so that you can enjoy your meals without the worry. Learn more at FODZYME.com and use the code GUTSHOW to save 20% off any single order. Welcome back to the Gut Show. Today's episode is all about digestive enzymes. So this is an interesting topic because this is a really high-level, multi-million-dollar industry, right? These are supplements that have been, you'll see over the counter. You're going to see ads for these. These are getting a lot of press because you spend money on them, and then they do well in return. So before we get into the episode, I do want to say that supplements, especially here in the United States, are not well regulated, meaning there's not a lot of supervision around making sure that companies are actually putting in their products what they say they are. And truthfully, there are some rules around marketing, but a lot of people really kind of scoot around those rules, and there's not a lot of great regulation around that marketing. And that means that what you see in terms of claims, maybe even reviews that are left, and even what we see online with paid influencers and things like that may not fully be accurate. And so it's important to understand what enzymes are, the science behind them, and then bring that knowledge into maybe looking at a product or making a decision on if you would benefit from these types of supplements, which would be true with any supplements. And I will say that I personally am very pro enzymes. I use enzymes. You'll see in this episode, we're sponsored by an enzyme company that we'll talk about a little bit more. And so even with that, it's really important to know the science behind it to then back up your opinion. And I'm going to hopefully not include much bias here, but I will share the enzymes that I use in practice, why I use them, including our sponsor FODZYME, because I really do believe in the science behind those products specifically. But there may be some products out there that I may not necessarily say are backed by science, but then we'll also talk about maybe why they would or wouldn't work for you so that you can make your best choice, because my goal is not to try to influence you to make my choice. My goal is to influence you with the education and knowledge so that you can make your own choices, because that's what matters the most. So before we get into how enzymes are used in a supplement form, digestive enzymes are made in the body. So these are things that are naturally occurring in the body, and they're actually proteins that are made and released by the body to help break down molecules in food into even smaller molecules that can then be absorbed in the process of digestion. So we think about them like some scissors, right? Molecular scissors. They're breaking up different things that we're eating so that we can then pull out those macronutrients like carbs, fats, proteins, but also all the way down to our micronutrients like vitamins and minerals, to then fully absorb them in order to use them in the body. So, right, you're not just what you eat, you're what you absorb and digest, right? And so digestive enzymes are used to help break things down. Now, these enzymes are going to be found throughout the entire GI tract, and each enzyme that's produced actually has a really specialized function, meaning it's going to break down one specific molecule, which is really important to know because the different enzymes that are released at the different stages of digestion make a huge difference in terms of how you're digesting your food overall, what you tolerate versus what you don't, and even symptoms that you may have. So the first set of enzymes that are going to be, in contact with your food are actually found in saliva, and that's going to be called salivary amylase. It is used to break down carbohydrates. You'll also have enzymes produced in your stomach acid, primarily pepsin, which helps break down proteins. And then the majority of your enzymes will be released in your small intestine by the liver, the pancreas, and the gallbladder. Primarily, the pancreas is going to be the main player here. So the other organs are kind of our, teammates for digestion outside of just the digestive tract itself. But your pancreas is really the major player. They kind of house the main role of producing those enzymes and releasing them so that your body can use them. And that's important to understand, because if something's going wrong in your pancreas, which we'll talk about in a little bit, then that means that something may be going wrong in terms of your digestive enzyme release. In groups, so looking at kind of a broad view, we have enzymes that break down carbs, fats, and proteins. Your enzymes that break down carbohydrates are typically called amylases. Your enzymes that break down fats are called lipases, and your enzymes that break down proteins are called proteases. This is important because you're likely going to see these on the back of a bottle or a product that you may be buying. Now, there are some specific enzymes that don't necessarily have these names in them, like pepsin for protein, for example, but they will still have that specific function. And that may not always be really clear unless you are familiar with the enzyme itself. But you can always do a quick Google search, like what does this enzyme break down, so that you can better understand what molecules you're targeting. Whenever we look at some common enzymes that we're either more familiar with or we talk about more, we have salivary amylase, like I mentioned, in saliva, your pepsin, which is in your stomach acid for protein, lactase, which is released in the small intestine to help break down lactose, which is dairy sugar, the sugar in milk and milk products, maltase, which is released in the small intestine to break down maltose, which is in starches, starchy foods, carbohydrates, and then sucrase, which is in your small intestine to break down sucrose, which is also sugar. So those are some really common ones that we have that are produced by the body that you may be familiar with or see again on a product, a package, or something. So ideally, in a healthy body, right, we eat food, and starting in the mouth with your saliva, your body's producing and releasing all the enzymes you need. They're breaking food down. You go to your stomach, things get broken down more. Go into your small intestine, we break it down more. Everything is running smoothly and we're good. For the majority of people, they are actually producing enough enzymes. Rarely is probably not the best word here, but it's not as common as it might seem from media and conversations there that we don't have enough enzymes. Typically, what's happening with the use of enzymes is to support the enzymes you already have. So the goal is to help maybe break foods down even more if the digestive system maybe isn't working as well, or you're overreacting to food in terms of food intolerance. We also may see the use of enzymes as the body is getting back into good digestive processes through routines. So in order to produce enzymes, your digestive system needs to be highly functioning. All of the systems as part of the system, right? All the conveyor belts, they need to be turned on. All of the team members that need to show up for their job have to be there and ready to work, right? And whenever you're in, chronic stress, when you're not sleeping, maybe you have just excess cortisol that could be related to an infection or another illness or a condition. You're not slowing down to eat. You're not really paying attention to your food. You're distracted. You're on the go. You're busy. That's not going to be a place where digestion is going to be prioritized, meaning you may have the capability to produce all of the enzymes that you need, but you may not be producing and utilizing all of your enzymes because of these different habits and behaviors. So there are times where digestive enzymes in supplement form may be beneficial. I don't necessarily support this as the only answer, because I do think it's more of a Band-Aid, but it is used a little bit like a Band-Aid while we're working on the digestive process overall and kind of fixing some of those behaviors in order to improve your digestive capacity and function yourself. And then we do use enzymes, again, to target intolerances that we are specifically aware of, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Are FODMAP troubles keeping you from enjoying your favorite foods? Our sponsor, FODZYME, can help you add these foods back to your diet. When sprinkled on or mixed with high FODMAP meals, FODZYME's novel enzyme blend breaks down the FODMAPs GOS, lactose, and fructan into more easily digestible carbohydrates, so you can enjoy your meals without the worry. I've personally used FODZYME all around the world, from Paris to New York City to my hometown of Nashville. And this has helped me eat out with more confidence, knowing I'm supported for my biggest triggers of garlic, onion, dairy, and beans. It is possible to enjoy food and eating out again without the worry of digestive discomfort, and FODZYME can help. Learn more at FODZYME.com and use the code GUTSHOW to save 20% off any single order. When things do truly go wrong, though, so when we know that someone is enzyme deficient in some way, that means that they're not going to break down certain foods and they may not be absorbing certain nutrients. So some of those digestive enzyme insufficiencies that we know of and are commonly diagnosed include sucrase isomaltase deficiency, or in the genetic form, congenital sucrase isomaltase deficiency. We call this SID and CSID, just an acronym for the name. This means that you don't have enough sucrase to digest certain sugars. Typically, this is genetic in that congenital form, but it can also be secondary to something else that's gone on in the small intestine, and it's more of the brush border. So it's not a problem with the pancreas, but the brush border of the small intestine is destroyed in some way or damaged. And so now the pancreas is trying to, release the enzymes, but they're not getting through to the small intestine properly. That's what happens with sucrase. And so what happens there is that we don't digest sugars properly, and that leads to diarrhea, right? And so it's something that we have to, if it's secondary, sometimes it can come back if we fix the cause, which might be celiac disease, IBD, things like that, infection, but sometimes it doesn't. And if it's genetic, it won't. And so we either reduce sucrose or we supplement sucrase, which is over the counter through a different form that we'll talk about. Another common one that lines up with that similar thing, right? The brush border enzymes aren't releasing it, or we just don't have enough of the enzyme, and that's lactose intolerance. And that's where we have a lactase deficiency that's there to break down that milk sugar. And so that means that you're going to have trouble with milk and dairy products, typically, again, bloating, pain, gas, diarrhea after eating those foods. And usually with lactose intolerance and a lactase deficiency, this gets worse as you age. We stop producing as much lactase as we get older. And some people, if you start already low, this may just progressively get worse. So for the majority of people, a lactose free or low lactose diet is key. And again, both with sucrose and lactose, or any deficiency or intolerance that may be present, it's important to find personalized portions of these foods that you do tolerate, because there is going to be a level that you do likely tolerate before you may even need supplementation or need full elimination or restriction. And then another condition that commonly occurs that does actually affect the pancreas. So it's not just a deficiency in one specific enzyme or a brush border small intestine problem, but a pancreas problem would be exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. This happens when your pancreas doesn't produce enough of the enzymes that are needed to digest your carbs, fats, and proteins. So this is going to be more of a large scale problem where you don't have enough enzymes at all to help digest your food. What's going to happen with EPI compared to the others is that overall nutrient absorption is going to be very low, because sucrose is just, certain sugars, but you're going to have other carbohydrates you can digest. Lactose, only certain sugars, you'll have other carbohydrates. You'll still have your proteins, you'll still have your fats, right? But with EPI, you're actually going to have more nutrient malabsorption. And so there may even be more symptoms that are present with EPI compared to some of the others, which might include weight loss and clear nutrient deficiencies through your labs. Stools may also, like your bowel movement stools, may also be more oily, and then post-meal symptoms are going to be really consistent with usually all food and all meals, especially bigger, heavier meals. Now, with all enzyme insufficiencies or intolerances, when these molecules are not broken down properly in the small intestine, they enter the large intestine intact, and they're not meant to. So the large intestine kind of freaks out a little bit, and it pulls water into the colon. And this is what we call an osmotic effect. So we have an osmotic effect in the colon, which is the large intestine. This leads to bloating, distension, pain, cramping, and typically diarrhea. In some cases, that poor breakdown of these nutrients can also lead to constipation. Less common, but it can happen. Not as common with EPI, but again, it can happen. And it's really more of, you're not breaking foods down. So the small intestine may kind of shut itself off a little bit in order to allow more time to try to break foods down. And that will cause a slowdown, or that increase in gas production with those molecules that haven't been broken down can kind of slow down the GI tract as well. So what causes this? I mentioned that sucrase isomaltase deficiency can be secondary to problems in the small intestine. The same can be true of exocrine pancreatic insufficiency. There are usually other things that are causing something to go wrong in the pancreas. The most common one being chronic pancreatitis or inflammation of the pancreas. We may see this with alcohol abuse, drug abuse, but sometimes it also just happens. Inflammation can run through the body and affect different organs, and that may happen here. Cystic fibrosis, any surgeries, especially if the pancreas is now impacted, GI surgeries, pancreatic cancer, or anything again that's impacted the pancreas directly, and then pancreatic cancer or any condition that truly disrupts the pancreas itself. So when we're thinking about, okay, what all could be going on, it's important to look back at your history and see if there's anything that lines up with this that might be of concern. And infections, viral or bacterial, are things not to rule out, because we do see a lot of digestion upset as well as organ function upset after really intense viral or bacterial infections in the body. So once you suspect that you may have an insufficiency of some sort, or maybe there could be a need for more enzymes or something's going on, there are actually ways that we can test for many of these deficiencies. When it comes down to CSID or SID, sucrase isomaltase deficiency, you can either do what's called a disaccharide ACE assay through an upper endoscopy. This is the gold standard. It's the best way to do it. It's not readily done because not all practitioners have access to labs that can do that. So it may or may not be done, but if you're getting an upper endoscopy, you could ask to have a disaccharide ACE assay, or you can say, can we test my enzymes? And that's an easy way to ask that. You can also do a breath test for sucrase isomaltase deficiency, which is more commonly done. For lactose intolerance as well as fructose intolerance, there are also breath tests available that can help you diagnose these conditions, but also see where you're at. When it comes to exocrine pancreatic insufficiency or EPI, typically a fecal elastase test will be done. This isn't always perfectly accurate. So again, we have to take into account your history, and then usually we're going to treat it if we suspect it, and the fecal elastase test comes back to show possible pancreatic insufficiency. We may treat it and then actually see if there's an improvement. If there's not an improvement, then it may not be a false positive, or we may need to look a bit higher level and figure out what else is going on. But if the treatment works, then that would confirm that diagnosis. So then this leads us to the major question, right? Should you actually take enzymes? Well, if you have EPI, you do need to take enzymes because you're not producing them, but they must be prescribed at very, very high doses. Creon is a common one that's prescribed. This is important because the enzymes that you get over the counter are not even close to the dosage that your body's actually producing, meaning they're not going to be therapeutic in the presence of true insufficiency. And so they're not gonna work, right? And so we do need to make sure that we use prescribed high dose, high level enzymes. And again, we should see symptoms get better. We should see nutrient deficiencies correct. We should see all of that improve. Now, when it comes to other intolerances or just for general digestion symptoms, there are over-the-counter enzymes that are available that you could buy. So should you take them? So if you're taking over-the-counter enzymes, it's ideal to target the enzymes with the molecules that you're trying to break down. There are no one-size-fits-all or general enzymes without a targeted reason that are going to truly be worth it. Oftentimes, when you're using an over-the-counter kind of general enzyme with meals, if you're seeing a benefit, it's likely either due to there's one of those enzymes in there that's working on something specific, or it could even be a placebo effect where you're expecting to feel better, and so you do feel better. So before we think about taking over-the-counter enzymes, or if you are taking over-the-counter enzymes, we have to make sure that you're actually improving your body's production of enzymes first, right? That is number one, because you're not likely going to just out supplement this, right? We've talked about that with the nervous system. That's true here as well. So ways that we can do that is to, one, produce saliva and make sure that you are chewing your meals thoroughly as much as you possibly can. Mixing your food with saliva is going to make a huge impact on your digestion and how your enzymes are working. Next is we do want to produce more stomach acid. And this is going to be produced when we slow down with meals, if we're relaxing before meals, and with decreasing stress overall. So getting the body in that rest and digest state as much as we possibly can. The third thing is we do want to correct any nutrient deficiencies. Nutrient deficiencies can be caused by not properly breaking down food, but also nutrient deficiencies can cause the digestive system to not function properly. And some effects of nutrient deficiencies are poor enzyme production and use of enzymes. So we have to make sure we're correcting them for the best digestion and more efficient digestion. And then the last tip is to eat more regular meals and meet your nutrition needs. You're not necessarily going to absorb all of your nutrients if you're not even eating them in the first place. And so again, just like correcting nutrient deficiencies, we have to be meeting all the needs that our body has so that we can then get the nutrition from that food. All right, so what enzymes do I actually recommend as an IBS specialist dietitian? I rarely recommend just kind of broad, general, over-the-counter enzymes. If you want to use a broad general enzyme just to see if it makes you feel better and you're okay with paying for it and you know it's safe, go for it. You get to decide, you get to choose. I am very much pro placebo effect as long as something is safe. And the way that you know, because again, our country doesn't necessarily regulate these for us, but you can check to see if a company has undergone third-party testing themselves. They have to pay for it and do it, but that is a way to increase your trust in what you're buying, again, to make sure that the product itself is going to be safe. You also want to discuss taking that product with your trusted healthcare team to make sure that there's no contraindications with medications, your medical history, or any other personalized needs that you may have. So with that in mind, some of the specific enzymes I do recommend often are lactase to break down lactose. A common brand for this is Lactaid. I typically do not recommend the fast-acting form of this because that has FODMAPs added to it. It might cause upset, but you can take the normal form or even generic forms. Just don't go for the fast-acting. Make sure it only has lactase in it as much as possible. Another one that I often recommend is alpha-galactosidase. This one is used to break down our GOS foods. This is a common FODMAP group, and this is often found in beans, peas, lentils, legumes, those gas-causing foods. This is really helpful if you are eating those foods, and a common brand is Beano. That does have some FODMAPs in it. I typically recommend a brand called Bean Assist. And then we come down to one of my favorite enzymes that I use myself and I recommend the absolute most with my IBS patients, and that is FODZYME. FODZYME has a combination of lactase, alpha-galactosidase, and their proprietary enzyme called fructan hydrolase that helps break down fructans, another FODMAP group. When it comes to fructans, our bodies actually don't produce an enzyme to break them down. Nobody breaks them down. And that's why they can lead to more symptoms for those with IBS or even those without IBS. And so what FODZYME has done is created, with the use of science and molecular chemistry, fructan hydrolase, which hydrolyzes the fructose out of fructan, meaning we reduce that FODMAP load on the large intestine. So then we reduce symptoms. And they've been able to study this in human digestive models to see a benefit, which is really great. Not only that, FODZYME is third-party tested. And so again, it's something that we can trust as being safe to try, and then we can test efficacy in your own body. Again, only if you're targeting lactose, GOS, and fructan foods. For sucrase isomaltase deficiency, I often recommend the brand Sucrade. This is a prescription that you have to get from a doctor, so it's not something that you can go buy over the counter, but this has been shown to be very effective for sucrase isomaltase deficiency. And from what I know currently, at the time of filming this, is that it's the only one on the market that has been tested for sucrase isomaltase deficiency. When it comes to fructose, there is another enzyme that's called glucose isomerase, which is often in the brand Fructade. This one has not been as well studied as some of the others, but can be an option. I've seen patients use it and have a lot of benefit when they are struggling with fructose foods. And so it might be something that you consider, again, with the help of your healthcare team. Now, beyond that, there's not a lot of great research to support oversupplementation of other foods. There is a heightened push in some camps in the medical world to supplement pepsin. I don't recommend this because pepsin does break down proteins. And whenever pepsin or any enzyme that's there to break down proteins, whenever they're released in the wrong place, especially in the esophagus and in other tissues, this can break down the proteins in your tissues, meaning it's going to cause damage. So this happens most often with the esophagus. And so we really don't want to oversupplement pepsin until it's been more thoroughly studied and we can trust that the capsule or however you're taking it is making its way into the proper places that it is meant to be in. And then I don't necessarily recommend a lot of broad spectrum enzymes. I know a lot of people out there may recommend these. I haven't seen them as being the most efficacious in my practice, but if you are really struggling with your digestion and you want to try something, again, trust your healthcare team, look for third-party testing. And then if it works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, don't waste your money. There may not be real science necessarily backing up your need for that. Or if you truly do feel like you need it, maybe you get exocrine pancreatic insufficiency testing done because you may need even higher doses than what's available to you over the counter. I hope this episode was helpful to better understand what digestive enzymes are, how you can stimulate the production of them yourself in your own body, which is the best, and then maybe some that you could consider, especially if you're living with IBS and you're dealing with digestive discomfort with certain foods. Are you really fed up with your IBS symptoms controlling your life? Are you frustrated with feeling like you're going in circles day in and day out, and you seem to try things on your own? You're taking in all the information, but you're still finding yourself stuck. If that's you, I invite you to join the Master Method membership. This is a science-backed holistic program for IBS that we've developed with you in mind. It covers what to do to support digestion, how to support the drivers of IBS, including gut-brain connection, your microbiome, altered motility, and even altered immune activation. We also talk about how to support your nutrition and your overall health through your diet, with a focus on what to actually add to your diet versus only what to take away. And we guide you through all 3 steps of the low FODMAP diet process in many different ways if you want to use that evidence-based tool for IBS. This program has been proven to work with many with IBS because it truly does approach health and well-being from a whole body perspective, while also targeting IBS specifically. So if you're ready to get guidance so that you can take control of your symptoms, join a community of others who are working on their IBS and ready to connect with those who get it, and lifestyle resources to help you every step of the way, then join the membership today at the link in show notes.